Hello, and welcome to the first episode of this very special video series. People seem to love it when I talk about defunct MMOs you can't officially play anymore, so today we're going to start a series on the demons of Shin Megami Tensei Imagine. I'm going to be discussing just about every demon available on the New Moon server by the end of this series. There are over 300 demons available to use in Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, and most of them are not noticeable in the slightest. Because of aspects of the game such as Demon Force, Epitaphs, and Mitama Boost, any demon can eventually be built to be the best possible demon for just about any possible role. The main thing separating demons is the floor they start with. While any demon can be made useful and even good, some demons are strictly better than others outside of lucky Demon Force rolls and other forms of favoritism. Because of this, I'm mostly going to focus on what a demon comes with out of the box, and ignore things like Demon Force that adds in too much randomness to the mix. I'm going to be covering one race of demon from each alignment each video. In this first video, I'll be talking about the Heavenly Gods, the Fairies, and the Nation Rulers, in that order. Omoikane is the lowest level Heavenly God in the game, coming in at level 31. All of the Heavenly Gods have the trait Takemagahara, which boosts their stats if paired with certain other demons, but usually you won't see this take effect. On first glance, Omoikane is not an impressive demon. He's weak to all forms of physical damage, he's vulnerable to every status ailment, and he's overall just whatever. Magic Govern is nice, but odds are you'll just be using him as an early game heal bot, if you use him at all. However, there are two big things going in Omoikane's favor. The first thing is Amaterasu F runs. Amaterasu F is arguably the most complex run in the game. While it's nowhere near as long as Samael to do, it does require all players to have 3 very specific demons with them for the run to succeed, and Omoikane is one of them. You only need to have Omoikane summoned at a certain point to do the run. You do not need to invest anything more into him besides just having him. But you might want to, because Omoikane is one of the elusive demons who can nullify all magical damage when Mitamaed. Nullifying all magic is vital to survive the Satan fight. While Omoikane's digitize requirements are rather hefty, he is one of the easier demons to get that has this feature. He also gains a boost of spell damage equal to half his own level once you Mitama him, which I guess is something. It's strictly worse than the feature Sunshine, which we'll talk about eventually, but there's never a reason to not want more damage. Tajikaro is the next Heavenly God, coming in at level 34, and he's pretty similar to Omoikane with a big twist to set him apart. He's vulnerable to every status ailment, including having a 200% weakness to the 3 traditional status ailment elements, but he is one of the required demons to pull off Amaterasu F runs. You might be wondering what the big twist is. Unlike Omoikane, Tajikaro has nothing going for him. He gets Strong Arm for a blunt damage boost and Step 32 for an HP cost reduction, which are both good, but nothing spectacular. Even when Strong Arm becomes Fast Strong Arm upon Mitamaing, he doesn't really do anything. He also has a 100% chance to repel Slash, Thrust, and Blunt damage when you Mitama him. But there are demons with much better, well, everything that can do the same thing, or at least similar things. Unless you really like the Muscle Man, there's not much going for him. Hino Kagatsuchi is a demon all about one thing: fire damage. Starting out at level 65, before you Mitama him, he gets both Explosive Fire and Fire Boost, innately giving him capped 100% fire affinity damage. His resistances are so-so, with a weakness to ice and only nullifying the stolen ailment, but also having many 75% resistances and a level % chance to absorb fire. When you Mitama him, he gains a 100% chance to repel thrust and blunt damage, and he also gets Moment of Brilliance, which gives him a 50% fire damage affinity cap, 50% more fire damage to fill said cap, and 10% final crit whenever using fire skills. I think I've sounded pretty positive about Hino Kagatsuchi, so you might be surprised to hear I've never seen another player use him as their demon. This is for a few reasons. The first is that Hino Kagatsuchi requires 500 congratulation cards to get his plugin, which can take a very long time to amass. The next is that Zukushe is a fusion component for him, who until recently was extremely hard to get. But the real reason is that everyone who can get Hino Kagatsuchi probably crystallizes him the moment he's born. The Hino Kagatsuchi crystal is incredibly valuable for all types of players. When applied to a weapon, that weapon becomes fire affinity. You'll get 50% fire affinity damage cap and 10% final crit, and when you digitize, you'll also gain an additional 100% fire damage. The crystal can also be made to make Hino Kagatsuchi the sword, While it's more of a trophy than anything nowadays, since I don't think it can be repaired and the Masakata weapons are much easier and stronger as weapons, it's quite the impressive trophy, boosting all stats by 48 and granting 100 melee and spell. Take Mikazuchi is like Tachikaro, but better, but still not amazing. He starts at level 71 and has decent resistances, with only a penetrate and very minor slash weakness, although he is vulnerable to all forms of status ailments before you Mitama him, where he'll shed his mystic vulnerability. He has Fruits of Labor, which halves the HP cost, which is great for him, and with electricity boost he can make good use of electrical discharge, which he learns at level 86, or lightning thrust, which he innately comes with. Flash becomes War God's power when you Mitama him, upping his slash, fire, electric, and force damage by 25%. He's alright. He gives a lot of electric damage, but that's pretty much it, and that's not really special. Tsukuyomi is a very hard to get demon, but I'd say the payoff is worth it. Tsukuyomi starts at level 80 and is weak to all forms of physical damage, but once you Mitama him, he'll repel all forms of magical damage. He also has boosted 4 gates, providing a slight buff to the traditional elements, not yet evidence of existence, providing a 30% cut to HP and MP cost, and 3 Heavenly Children, which provides a small stat buff when you're in a party with his siblings Susanoo and Amaterasu. When you Mitama him, Tsukuyomi's physical weakness goes down from 200% to 150%, and he gains an interesting feature in Night of the Full Moon. At night, Tsukuyomi gains a 30% boost to spell damage and limit break power, and during a full moon he'll gain a 100% boost to spell and limit break power. It can be difficult to play around these boosts, especially the full moon one, since a full moon only lasts for around 18 minutes of real world time, and only occurs once or twice a day. But if you're a big fan of how that feature sounds, Tsukuyomi's crystal gives a slightly weaker version to the player character. As an added bonus to lawful players, it will also give a level times 0.07 chance of repelling magical damage. Speaking of his crystal, there's an interesting set bonus that takes effect when you're wearing gear enhanced by Tsukuyomi, Susanoo, and Amaterasu crystals. The player character will gain 10% limit break chance, 20% limit break power, and a 40% boost to fire and electric damage during the day, and a 40% boost to ice and force damage during the night. The big problem with Tsukuyomi is actually getting him though. Not only is he a 500 congratulation card plugin, but his actual fusion is pretty complicated too. You'll need both an inexperienced Yatagarasu, who requires a hefty investment into the demonic compendium, and a Nyx, who is also a pain to fuse because you'll need Norn, who herself is either another pain to fuse or comes from a rare PG. Would you look at that? Amaterasu is so beloved by Atlas that there's 2 of them. I don't mean Amaterasu in her enhanced version, I mean Amaterasu male and Amaterasu female. Amaterasu M is the first one I'm going to cover. This is the design Amaterasu had in Nocturne, and he starts at level 84. Amaterasu M takes 67% damage from all sources except from Fire, Expel, and Death, which he nullifies, and Mystic, Mind, and Nerve, which he takes 34% from. Keep in mind that he's still vulnerable to all those status ailments despite resisting them. This Amaterasu is meant to be played as a player support, coming with Eternal Prayer for 100% curative affinity, and learning a bunch of good support skills like Media Ranhan, Debilitate, and Samara Charm naturally. Although keep in mind Amaterasu M offers no direct summoner support buffs, he's just a healer. When Itama'd, Amaterasu M's Fire Null becomes a drain, and he'll now resist status ailments at 12%. Eternal Prayer also becomes God of Sun, stapling on an additional 50% fire and electrical damage. Amaterasu's other features are worthless and not worth spending time on. Speaking of being worthless and not worth spending time on, Amaterasu M has semi-exclusive access to Divine Blast. Divine Blast is an expel, physical spin that costs 20% HP and MP to use, with an only okay damage modifier, boosted if the target is not of the same alignment. It also has 300 seconds of cooldown. It's a big, bad skill. Do not use it ever. Amaterasu M is also very difficult to fuse, again requiring an inexperienced Yatagarasu, but also Mithra, who himself is only available through certain tri-fusions, and Kakulin, who's not too hard to get, thankfully. Amaterasu F uses her more classic design, and shares quite a bit with her male counterpart. They have the same resistances pre and post Mitama, the same fusion recipe except for Kakulin being switched for Hathor, and the same 3 worthless features, but before Mitama, Amaterasu F has Sunshine, a 50% boost to spell damage. This becomes Goddess of Sun when Mitamaed, providing an additional 50% fire and electrical damage in addition to the spell boost. Amaterasu F also comes at a higher level, at 94. She innately comes with both Megiddola and Maragadine, two of the best magical shot skills in the game right out of the gate, but you'll have to teach her other offensive skills through SP. Despite having much less to say about her, this is probably the better Amaterasu. Or is she? I wasn't lying when I said Amaterasu had an enhanced version. Amaterasu of Kuyo is an extremely difficult to get demon, fused through a triangle fusion of Tethered Horse Omoikane, Tethered Horse Tachikaro, and Tethered Horse Amno Uzume. This Amaterasu is only level 70 compared to the normal one's level 94, but she comes with a number of interesting perks. The first is the Of Kuyo feature. Of Kuyo is a 15% general damage boost, a 25% fire damage boost, a 10% electrical damage boost, and a 10% boost to fire skills technical attack power, and a 50% HP and MP cost reduction for fire skills. Once Mitamaed, all of these effects double in power. While this Amaterasu doesn't drain fire like her normal version, she innately nullifies all forms of status ailments and comes with two semi-unique skills. The first is Evil Crushing Bow. It's a rapid skill with a higher damage modifier than Myriad Arrows, and it scales as both long range and half your spell stat, but it comes out much slower than Myriad, so it's still probably worse. The other unique skill she learns is Cauterizing Fist. I believe this is one of only 4 tri-scaling skills that predominantly scales with spell in the game, with the others being Fire of Sinai and the Megiddo Arc skills. Cauterizing Fist's modifier is also impacted by your current HP. I think it loses damage as you lose HP, but I don't have the skill so I'm not certain. It also can't be spammed because of its long cooldown, but it will pack a punch. There is one thing to keep in mind with this Amaterasu though. If you're going for a pure spell build, normal Amaterasu is better, because normal Amaterasu F has a higher spell boost and electrical damage boost because of Goddess of Sun. There's one last thing to talk about with the Amaterasus. Both the male and female version have quickly produced variants that are available through the secret room. If you want to build one of these two demons, this is a great way to breeze through the initial pre-Mitama phase, especially because both demons have rather complicated fusion recipes. Of course, this also means gambling in the secret room, so you might be better off just going through it the normal way. Fairies come with the unique feature of Fairy Assist, which boosts the summoner's cultivation based off the fairy's intelligence and luck stats. Almost none of the fairies are worth spending much time on, so these reviews are probably going to go pretty quickly, despite the large amount of fairies there are in the game. Pixie is a fan favorite demon, but unfortunately she's about as weak as she always is. If you want to use Pixie, you'll probably want to ignore the generic Pixie and go with one of her alternative forms. Leader Pixie is a mandatory recruit as part of the game's tutorial, and she's slightly better than normal Pixie, but still nothing to write home about. There's also Stormy Pixie, who learns a number of good skills quickly, and Lucky Pixie, who can boost your character's luck as well as their Maka and Magnetite gain when Mitamaed. The real Pixie you want to use is Super Pixie. I don't know much about Super Pixie because it's hard to find information on things added in the Reimagine server, but I do know she has a resistance to almighty damage, which is an incredible thing to have. Note that her fusion requires Stormy Pixie, so if you want her, you'll have to choose Stormy Pixie when Snakeman offers you a demon. Jack Frost is the mascot of Shin Megami Tensei, and he is also not very good. Like with Pixie, there are many alternative versions of Jack Frost, including Santa Frost and Shishima Frost, who are treated as entirely separate demons. But Blizzard Jack Frost is probably the only one worth looking at. Blizzard Jack Frost is trained by Snakeman, which basically means he's a fancy, inexperienced demon. Inexperienced demons generally aren't worth considering for heavy investment, as the inexperienced feature will overwrite whatever Mitama feature they would get, but Jack Frost doesn't lose too much if you choose to invest in Blizzard Jack Frost. Like with Stormy Pixie, he learns a bunch of decent skills very early, capping out with Megiddolan as early as level 45. Megiddolan is an impractical skill to actually use, but it's a good emergency nuke button when you really need one. However, I still wouldn't recommend going for him, as the way Snakeman's gift demons work is that your character will entirely lose access to the other two when you pick one. And again, Super Pixie gotten through Stormy Pixie is very, very good. Although you could always just make another character under the same account and get all 3 of Snakeman's demons, it's not too much of an investment to go through with that. Many Jack Frost variants learn one of the many Jack signature moves. DBB is a simple stat buff, but there's also Frost Punch, Galactic Frost Punch, and Boomerang Frost Telios. Rainbow of Victory Jack Frost can learn all of these skills, but it involves him leveling up all the way to 99, which is an unrealistic ordeal of a task. You're better off looking for some other Frost demons if you want to use these skills. High Pixie is a better version of a generic Pixie. Rather than the extremely underwhelming Weather trait, High Pixie gets an ability, a level times 0.3 boost to magical damage. Like Pixie, she also has a 50% chance to nullify the traditional elements when Mitama, except for electricity, which she will always drain. That's pretty much all she has going for her, and she picked up a weakness to slash, blunt, and thrust attacks normal Pixies do not have. Pyro Jack is the cooler Jack brother, and like his brother, he gets many alternative forms that aren't worth looking at. Inferno Pyro Jack is the third option Snake Man will offer you, and he'll also learn a bunch of very good skills very early on. If you played the game around October, you had access to Hospitable and Naughty Pyro Jack. These variants were meant to be turned into an NPC for a random reward, but on the New Moon server it became possible to Mitama them. Naughty Pyro Jack got the standard Pyro Jack Mitama feature of plus 30% fire damage and plus 1 fire skill use, while also getting a fire affinity cap boost of 50% and a limit break cap boost when using Melantern Dyne, a weaker Moraga Dyne that certain Pyro Jack forms can learn. Hospitable Pyro Jack's feature instead supports the summoners, providing a 10% fire affinity cap for the summoner and a 5% limit break chance, limit break power, and final crit for party members. Hospitable Pyro Jack is probably the best one to invest in, but even when he was around, he was an incredibly rare spawn. Gandharva is yet another fairy without anything notable going on. This guy comes with a whopping 3 features that boost his stats depending on the party demons, none of which are worth looking at. He at least doesn't come with many weaknesses and has a good amount of resistances, including an immunity to mind ailments, which is something I guess. Other than that, his fairy assist becomes musical talent upon Mitamaning, which boosts nerve damage and reduces incantation time. I don't think there's any physical nerve skills, and this guy definitely leans towards the physical side of things, so this feature mainly exists for flavor. Kelpie's up next, and you can probably predict what I'm about to say. He has bad features and okay-ish resistances, aside from a big force weakness that is counteracted by a 50% chance to drain it. He'll also gain Ice Drain on Mitama and an objectively worse version of Jack Frost's Mitama skill. Troll is another fairy that exists in this game. He repels death on Mitama and thus nullifies the stone ailment, but he's vulnerable to every other ailment in the game. He also gets Winter Shogun upon Mitamaing, which boosts his rush, spin, and ice damage. If the wiki I'm looking at to get all my information from is to be believed, he also gets both Kenpo Pick-Hill, which is a level % chance to nullify blunt damage, and an innate 100% chance to nullify blunt damage through his resistances. We're finally starting to get somewhere with fairies with something to talk about. Tamlin has very good resistances all around. When Mitamaed, he'll resist everything but Almighty and Wards of Power, although he'll only nullify the stone ailment, which is a bit of an issue. Night Bond, his Mitama feature, nullifies magical attacks entirely at level times 0.5, while also slightly reducing the cost of his skills. He's an okay basis for a defensive digitized demon, although you'll probably want something that can more consistently nullify stuff. His crystal is also pretty decent, boosting both speed and shot damage. As I mentioned in my last Imagine video, Vivian gets support times level times 0.5 upon Mitamaing, but that's not the Vivian you want to use. For 1000 tears that fall at the end of the world, you could buy a copy of Dedication Vivian, who when Mitamaed gives a whopping 300% experience points gained boost. Her crystal is also good for fledgling melee and DU players. Apply it as a tarot card to boost your demon's strength, magic, and speed, or apply it as a soulstone for a nice buff to your weapon's damage. Oberon comes with a bunch of good resistances but a big weakness to mystic damage. When Mitamaed, he'll fully nullify stone and mind-based ailments. He also comes with Electrical Discharge, which is a pretty decent skill, but as a physical skill it clashes with nobility, his Mitama feature which boosts his spell based off of level times 0.3. Titania comes with really good resistances, especially when Mitamaed, where she'll only be vulnerable to nerve ailments. She also comes with a somewhat unique access to Blessing of the Silver Moon, which applies to Makakaja and also either raises resistance status ailments or outright repels them depending on where you're reading. When Mitamaed, Titania also learns nobility. The Fairy Queen and King also give each other stat buffs when partied together, but it's the strength and speed and they're both magical demons, so not only is this hard to utilize, even if you can, you probably won't want to. Now we're on to the last fairies in the game. On the official server, these guys were joke demons who couldn't even be fused with a Mitama, but New Moon gave them some powerful effects if you do fuse them. There are 4 flavors of demon goldfish: red, white, black, and golden. Red, white, and black demon goldfish get a boost to certain elemental affinity caps and final crit. Fire for red, ice for white, and force for black. In addition to the same effect for electricity with golden goldfish, he also boosts Maka and Magnetite gains by a whopping 150%, the highest amount in the entire game. This makes the golden goldfish the premier H2 farmer, which is the best dungeon in the game to run to grind for Maka. The downside to these guys is that they're a bit annoying to obtain. You have to farm baby goldfish in the lobby of Izumo for a long time. Thankfully, somebody's usually selling them in bulk for not too much. They also start up with the obnoxious deformed status. Deformed greatly lowers the amount of experience a demon earns, and while you can overwrite this with an epitaph, doing so will lock the demon, and you'll have to unlock and remove the epitaph every time you need to rebirth it. At the end of the day, it's not a big deal, but it is very annoying. Finally for today, we have the nation rulers, usually known as the Kanitsu, starting with Onimuchi. Every single nation ruler comes with Toyo Ashihara, a trait that boosts the nation ruler in question's strength by 10 if you use it in a party with Susanoo. This feature will probably never see use, and you're probably better off overwriting it with just about anything else. Onimuchi has very mediocre resistances, having a weakness to force and nullifying nothing at all. He's very resilient towards the power, but I don't know what this is, and I don't think I've ever seen this damage type before. His only other feature besides Toyo Ashihara is electricity boost, which upgrades into Rising Thunder, but all that does is reduce the cooldown of electric attacks. Oddly, despite defaulting to the Tiwa's growth path, which prioritizes strength, his spell stat defaults to 1 point higher than his close range stat upon Mitama-ing. Overall, I wouldn't recommend using Onimuchi unless you really like him, because he doesn't really do anything unique at all. Oya Matsumi is a level 50 nation ruler. He's entirely impossible to fuse. You must buy his PG from the Mountain of Masakado shop if you want him. He's the easiest method of getting Buddha's Palm, and if you teach him Akasha art, you can kill him for an Akashic Baritsu orb, which, while incredibly powerful, is also not much better than Hades' Blast, which is much easier to obtain. His features are Strong Arm, which is a 20% blunt boost, and God of the Mountain. God of the Mountain is a summoner boost feature, one that boosts HP and MP regeneration by 20, Maka and Mag earned by 30%, and Curative received by 50%. These numbers are upgraded to 50, 50%, and 100% upon Mitama-ing. While not a very popular choice for a passive slave in my experience, Oya Matsumi is very easy to get, only requiring 5 solo runs of Mound of Masakado, and less with a full party. His resistances aren't great, having a big fire and force weakness and only nullifying stone through nulling death, but he'll pick up an Expel Repel on Mitama, as well as upgrading his Death Null to Repel. He's not exceptional, but you don't have to overlook him either. The other options to getting boosted Maka gain are much harder to get. Okunanushi is a personal favorite demon of mine because I thought he was cool in Devil Survivor Overclocked. But how good is he in this game? Not nearly as strong, but is he at least functional? Let's see. Okunanushi starts at level 59, and his resistances are okay, I guess. He repels Expel and nullifies Death, but he can still be hit by any other status element. He takes less damage from all long-range affinities as well as fire, ice, and electricity, so I guess he's kind of resilient. His features are Toya Ashihara, Flash, which is a 20% flash damage boost, and God of Demons, which reduces damage taken from God Demons by 30%. None of these are especially great. When you Mitama him, he'll gain Sundering Attack, a wide-sweeping feature that doesn't do too much at the end of the day. The most useful part of it is the 50% attack boost, but there are some demons who get an 100% attack boost through their features. The feature also gives him minus 50% spin cooldown, minus 50% rush incantation, and plus 50 crit, but none of these are especially great. Unless you're like me and really like Okunanushi, I would just ignore him. Take Minataka is usually one of the weaker demons in any given game, but here he's actually one of the higher level nation rulers at 63. He has a big weakness to nerve and fire, although that fire weakness is somewhat patched up through a 50% chance of absorbing fire damage. When he's Mitama'd, he'll nullify stone and mind ailments, but that's it. He'll also pick up War God's Power, a 25% boost to slash, fire, electric, and force damage. This stacks with his innate electricity boost, giving him a good amount of electrical damage without any real investment. But there's nothing truly standout about Takeminataka. If you want a good electric attacker, you can take any demon with the electricity boost feature and apply 4 Mitamas to the Perils path to get a demon with a 70% electric damage boost, 90% with Mitama science. Arahabaki is known as the MF who repels Fizz by many fans of the series, but he doesn't actually do that in this game. Instead, he has a blanket 50% chance of nullifying physical damage, and then an additional 30% chance to nullify slash, thrust, and blunt damage. Arahabaki is also weak to everything but Ice, Expel, Death, and Almighty. I don't think the physical nullification is worth it. What else is this demon packing? Magic Torrent and Ice Boost aren't bad, especially when paired with Magic Govern to cut down on MP cost. And when you Mitama fuse Arahabaki, he'll get a slight cooldown cut and he'll nullify Charm. He'll also nullify Stone, but he innately nullifies Death even before Mitamaing, so there's exactly one attack in the game that this nullifies the Stone chance on. Did I mention this MF is weak to everything but 4 affinities in the game? Ichimokuren is a new demon that I don't have, so I don't really know everything about him. Ichimokuren starts out as a rather generic demon, but when Mitama'd, he gains the force equivalent to Hino Kagatsuchi's fire feature. For those of you who forgot what that was, that's a 50% force boost, a 50% force affinity cap, and 10 final crit on force kills, on top of force boost and technician for his other features. And when you crystallize Ichimokuren, those bonuses are given to the player, while also turning your weapon's default damage type to force. The Discord post that announced him didn't list his instances, but also be aware that Ichimokuren is a very hard demon to get. Not only will you have to farm up both 500 congratulation cards and sweet beans, but you'll also need Kresnik. If this is a fusion that allows for variance, he isn't too hard to get, but otherwise you'll have to grind Peninsula for a while. Horus is also needing, meaning you'll have to do a bunch of high-dimensional Seth fights. One last thing I forgot to mention is that Ichimokuren is very important for Satori Komeji cosplays if you care about that. Sukuna Hikuna's files were in the game for quite some time, but he was never added to Imagine while it was officially online. New Moon did add him to the game though, as the ice version of Hino Kagatsuchi. As a demon, Sukuna Hikuna is the best of the three, thanks to its other features. One of them boosts the summoner's HP by 300 points while also nullifying Mute, Muddle, and Instant Death. And its ice boosting feature also boosts rapid damage and curative power. I'm fairly certain that Sukuna Hikuna even learned the unique Ice Rapid skill, but I haven't unlocked that skill and not many people have Sukuna Hikuna, so I might be lying. The reason nobody has Sukuna Hikuna is that he is yet another demon that requires 500 congratulation cards to obtain, and in his case he'll also need to progress a good amount of the way through the Chain of Curse storyline. Sukuna Hikuna nullifies Mind and Death ailments naturally, but he's still vulnerable to Nerve and Mystic. He's also surprisingly easy to fuse compared to Hino Kagatsuchi and Ichimuroken, only needing Takemizuzuchi, Okunanushi, and Koropokuro. And that's it for today's demons. If you liked the video or found it helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be leaving a link to the wiki I used to get my information in the description tab, so feel free to check it out if there's a demon you're interested in I have yet to cover.